Well, while Brexit negotiations continue between the UK and the EU this week, a new think tank is being launched pushing for the need for free trade agreements between Britain and other countries. The Institute for Free Trade describes itself as a private, not-for-profit, non-partisan research foundation and says it will make the intellectual and moral case for free trade. The group is being launched at the Foreign Office tonight and will be attended by senior cabinet ministers, including the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson and the International Trade Secretary Liam Fox. Well, let's speak now to the President of the Institute for Free Trade, the Conservative MEP and Leave campaigner Daniel Hannan. He's in our Westminster studio. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I'll come to your guest list in just a moment, but I want to pick up from what we've just heard, which is the strongest evidence you can hear that a free trade agreement is only as strong as the political will behind it. And in this case, the United States, the protectionism has come in and, well, you can blow the free trade agreement out of the water.
Oh, definitely, this is a bad decision, and it will hurt US consumers and US manufacturers even more than it hurts British workers. But it's bad news all round. But this is a decision that's been made now while we're in the EU and while we have no control of our own trade policy. All of our trade policy with the US has to be done on our behalf by Brussels. Once we leave, we will be able to put in place an agreement with the US where tariffs on this kind of product become illegal, and I think we'll therefore be in a much stronger position.
I don't follow the argument, but why can't we do that now?
Because as long as you're in the European Union, you have no trade policy. Part of being in the European Union is that your trade agreements are controlled 100% by Brussels.
No, but that doesn't change America's point of view or their mind, or in this case, their decision by this particular court.
No, indeed. But between the EU and the US, there is no trade deal. There's been no accord at all. There have been attempts to get one going since the mid-80s, and they've floundered, frankly, on the basis of protectionism on both sides. But it's not from Britain. I mean, there have been protectionist interests in France, in Italy, and so on. Once we are in a position to do our own deal with the US, we can create a deal where tariffs on manufactured products of this kind are illegal.
Aren't you being a bit naive? Because clearly countries are going to have a protectionist. They will always look after their own jobs. We've seen it in the United States. In some ways, we're seeing it here with Bombardier. We're upset because there is a threat to jobs here.
I mean, they're not really protecting their own jobs. This is the absurdity of it. For every job saved in Boeing, if a job is saved in Boeing, many more jobs will be lost all the way down the line throughout the aviation industry in the US. This is always the way with protectionism. You save a small number of jobs who have political power and who have lobbied, but there is always a greater cost to the economy as a whole. The trouble is that the people who are losing their jobs don't really know who they are. They don't make the connection between the policy and the fact that they don't have a job, whereas the people who are lobbying, in this case Boeing, do know who they are, and this is why you have this pressure for protectionism. This is why you need to have a foundation like ours, which is going to stand up for the consumers and stand up for the economic interests of the countries as a whole. If we could remove this sort of barrier, it would add trillions to the world economy without really costing anyone anything. At
one point you were seen as an advocate of, I think, the Norwegian model as the closest to what you thought might work for us. Have you changed your mind on that?
No, I was never pro-Norway. I mean, no two countries outside the EU have their own, have the same deal. So whatever we do is going to be sui generis. I mean, you know, everyone has their own thing. But I'd be much more in favour of something more along the lines of what the Swiss do. The trouble with Norway is that it's a member of the European Economic Area, which was only ever intended as a sort of step towards full membership. It was never designed as a permanent settlement, let alone as a way for a country to leave.
Now, I don't want to rain on your parade. You've got your big evening tonight, the launch of your group. The presence of the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, the International Trade Secretary Liam Fox, some are saying that shows Theresa May is being weak in allowing them to be present at this event tonight. Does their presence put them at odds with her policy? Is your policy so at odds with hers?
Absolutely not. No, I've been working with Downing Street right from the beginning on this. They are very happy about it. They've been announcing it. They're backing it in every... I mean, it would be weird if you didn't have the relevant ministers whose portfolios are affected by this present. And I'm really pleased that we're going to be able to be working with HMG because we want to deliver. I mean, this isn't just going to be a think tank that makes noise. We have 2 years in which to decide whether we're just going to roll over our existing EU policies on trade when we leave, or whether we're going to take the opportunity to cut prices to boost our economy and to revitalise the world trading system. And if we get this right, if we become the kind of open economy that we used to be and that we could be again, it doesn't just help us. It doesn't just bring jobs and prosperity to Britain. It also helps some of the poorest people on the planet who are excluded from EU markets, but who could once again find a market here.
But what about our relationship with Europe, which is still going to be, well, perhaps still the most important relationship? Are you basically saying, well, forget that, there are bigger and better markets elsewhere?
In the long run, of course, it is true that the markets elsewhere are becoming bigger and proportionately the EU markets are becoming smaller, but they're still very significant as a percentage of our trade. They take 44% of our exports. So no, we should have free trade with the EU and the rest of the world in the way that the Swiss and others do. In other words, we should have access to the European market. We should have enough regulatory convergence to make that smooth, but that shouldn't prevent us from doing our own deals with the biggest economy, the US, the second biggest, China, the EU isn't talking to them, fast-growing economies like India, and indeed countries where we have particularly close ties, legal, linguistic and sentimental ties like Australia and New Zealand. So at the end of this process, we should be the most open economy in this part of the world, and then all of our people will see the benefits flowing in.
Well, yeah, Europe would just turn around and say, you're still talking in terms of having your cake and eating it.
Well, actually, I hope the EU will see that it is in their interests to have a prosperous neighbour next door. And I certainly think we should approach the talks in the same spirit. We don't want Brexit to damage our European allies. These are 27 countries which are old friends and allies of ours, but are also our suppliers and our customers. And the best kind of customer is a wealthy one. So we want to have rich neighbours. And I think that logic applies both ways.
Daniel Hannan, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.